So we did have April Fool's Day over the weekend, and during that day, there were a lot of announcements all over the place. And for the most part, people are trained to kind of ignore a lot of the news, or at least look at it with a lot of skepticism. And unfortunately, sometimes actual products or games or services get announced on that day, and that did happen here. And when it was first shown, and I'm sure many did look at it as, okay, maybe this is an April Fool's joke, but turns out, no. Asus is really going to be introducing their own Steamdeck competitor, and some people are maybe even looking at this as the potential to be a Steamdeck killer. And that's something we're going to look at here today. So if you guys enjoy the video, make sure you like it and subscribe if you're new here to the SpawnWave Plus channel. Let's head over here. Two different sources I wanted to look at today, and I'll leave them linked down below. But this one comes to us from The Verge with the Asus ROG Ally handheld. It's real. It's not an April Fool's joke. And there is an entire trailer that's showing the product off from Asus. And when that was initially posted up, along with a message for it on Twitter, people looked at it like, oh, nice April Fool's Day joke. Nope, they are really going to be creating this thing. And in fact, it's in the hands of people right now. I saw Dave 2D did an entire video showcasing the product, and I think Linus Tech Tips also posted a video up just maybe an hour ago. So we're starting to see more and more videos go up of hands-on time with what apparently is a prototype. Even on the back, it has a big sticker that mentions it being a prototype or an early build, and it's subject to change and all of this. But we did get some pretty interesting details around it. Like, we can see this comparison here where it does use a 7-inch display similar to the Steam Deck, but they went with a different aspect ratio. Instead of 16 by 10, 16 by 9. Resolution at 1920 by 1080, 500 nits, and they are going for 120 hertz display or panel on this thing, and that one's a bit strange to me. That feels more like them pushing it for marketing purposes as opposed to actual functionality, but that will obviously come down to performance and what kind of games you're going to be playing, because this will be created using a newer chipset from AMD, one that wasn't even necessarily being named as it is being created on the 4-nanometer node. So there's a lot of questions still about the chip inside of this device. But you can see it's a little smaller than the Steam Deck, and I don't know, I guess the overall size of it, we expect these devices to be fairly large still, and maybe over time they'll slim down. But if you want a device that's going to perform similar to the Steam Deck or better even, you're probably locked into that kind of form factor, at least for now. Again, we'll see how this progresses over the next 5 or 10 years, but you are missing the touchpads that Valve dropped onto the Steam Deck, and they also have a bit of a different placement when it comes to the analog sticks, those being more offset with the D-pad below it and the standard A, B, X, Y buttons above that right stick. Now, I did want to take a look inside of the system because Dave 2D did take the back of it off. Again, pre-production hardware, subject to change, but there's a lot going in here that I like. Specifically, the cooling does seem to be a step above what we have with the Steam Deck, that relying on just a single fan, heat pipe, all of this. This isn't a new design or anything. You may see this in different laptops, and this design would only annoy me if it was trying to cool 2 chips rather than just one, because if you have 2 chips, you may as well separate the cooling for each one and make them independent, especially if it's a gaming laptop that has a CPU on one side and a GPU on the other. That way you don't have 2 fans spinning at the same time to try to cool maybe one chip that's working more than the other. But obviously here, the SoC, we just have one to cool, and you have that single pipe going across and 2 different exhaust for the heat, which does get pulled in through the back. And Dave did mention that it has a nice side effect of, since the air comes in near where you're holding it, it actually cools your hands as well. So there's that. You also see a lot of modular pieces and parts, something else mentioned in that video, where the analog stick itself can just be changed out. Like, it's not soldered to the board or anything. In fact, we have some different ribbon cables running all over the place. It's hard to tell what exactly would be the analog stick, but I would assume maybe the smaller one here, then maybe over here, right? But you also see some of the boards are all screwed down, and most likely we have several pieces that can be changed out in the event that you have some malfunctions going on. The battery is also kind of in this split design here, running across the bottom, then plugging into the board. And I do like when you get different colored PCBs, even though it doesn't really matter necessarily for the bulk of users. It is nice you open it up and they're playing into that kind of that red ROG sort of color scheme there. And then we do have, you could see here, our M.2 or NVMe that appears to be pretty accessible. As soon as you take the back off, it's right there. I am curious. I guess you're locked into this overall kind of that size, the form factor of it, which you sort of expect based on what we saw with the Steamdeck, since these handhelds, you are working within certain space constraints, so you're not going to get like a 2280, for example, and drop it in here. Most likely, I don't know. I'm sure the modding world will figure something out. But then we do have our overall shot of the board with the SoC just present here. And again, we need more information on what exactly AMD has produced, because apparently they've partnered completely with Asus to bring this to market. So very interesting to hear the specs and even the performance, because from what I've seen with some of the previews that have gone out, the performance is significantly better even than what we have with the Steamdeck currently. And you kind of expect that. It's been in PC gaming time, it's been a while since the Steam Deck came out, so things move very quickly in this space, and it's no different when it comes to even these SoCs that are more mobile-based than something you would put on a massive video card and jam into your PC tower. And our RAM just being down here completely soldered in directly next to that SoC. So the big question now, and the thing that right now people are saying is, wow, this could be the big competitor to the Steam Deck, because at this time, there are a lot of devices that come out attempting to compete with the Steam Deck, but they all fall short in one major category, and that's price. I've seen devices come out that do perform better than the Steam Deck, but then you look at how much it costs, and it's like $1,400–$1,500. How do you recommend that over a Steam Deck that starts at $400? Valve themselves said it was very difficult to get to that price point, and they have a bit of an advantage over all these companies that are making these systems, because they can sell the Steam Deck as a way to get people into their own ecosystem with Steam. Like, it has its own Steam OS that comes on the Steam Deck, so you're immediately plugged into that marketplace where Valve is collecting 30% of every sale. Asus they don't own Windows, which this is what it's shipping on. They won't have any of those residuals to try to make up potential money they could be losing on the hardware. So they say pricing on this is going to be competitive. It won't be $400, but if the performance is really good, it's been mentioned that the fan speed is lower, so you don't hear it. It's not as audible as with the Steam Deck. The benefits maybe of you liking the form factor more, and there's a lot of things that they could do outside of just being cheaper that makes it feel like that difference is worth it. Maybe they come in at $650, $700. I guess $800 would still be high, but it would still be somewhat competitive with one of the higher end Steam Decks that's available, because they're different SKUs. Then I think they have something. My thought, though, is that most likely this will come in at like $99.99, and they'll say, look, we got it under $1,000. That's pretty good for the performance. Also, the fact that it's Asus and it's their ROG line isn't exactly playing into the idea of this being a cheap overall device. But let me know what you guys think about this one down below, especially if you own a Steam Deck now. Would something like a device from Asus, priced higher but giving you better performance, make you move on from the Steam Deck? Or are you just going to kind of hang out and wait for Valve to eventually make a more powerful Steam Deck 2 somewhere down the line? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.